Okay, so we're done with classifying controls. So I just wanna give you how we picture out yung IT-based classification. So ito yung pinaka best for me illustration. So there are two types of control in terms of IT. We have manual or automated. At I have discussed earlier its application. Wherein ito yon. Ito yung pinaka-detailed explanation how it paano siya define. As you can see here, there's a manual controls on the upper part, and then in the middle there's an application control wherein in between those yun yung pinagsama yung IT dependent manual controls, and as you can see at the lower part yung IT general controls, yung ITGC, wherein the main point of ITGC support the continued function of automated aspects of preventive detect controls. Yun lang. Siguro ang tip ko rito when answering the CIA exams or actual exams, mostly lumalabas talaga to. So, ang suggestion ko, the way you're gonna answer this, elimination. So, example, ang tanong doon, kunwari, um, which of the following is an application control? So, ang pinakamadali na elimination dito, ano yung application control? Yun lang. Alalahanin mo yun. Ano rito yung application control? So from that, may eliminate mo siya. Yun yung pinakamadali to identify. As long as it's automated, it's within the system, it's within the application, most likely application control yun. So yung matitira, yung pinaka, you think yung kinda weird, and yung naiiba talaga, then yun yung ITGC naman, on the other hand. Okay? Also, I forgot to mention yung sa application control, just remember yung IPO, input, process, output. So, for the application control, sa input, process, output, remember, may mga controls surrounding that. Merong controls in the input, merong mga controls sa processing, and merong controls sa output processing. So, just remember that. As you, I hope, ma-discuss to sa IT, classes nyo na from data, mag-input siya to a specific system, mapaprocess siya, and then magiging output na magiging information. Ganon. Anyway, moving on to other topics aside from the classification of control, just so you know lang. So I have discussed this last time, kanina pala. SOD. When you say SOD, it's segregation of duties. Ang point lang ni segregation of duty is these duties should be separated simply because we need to eliminate yung internal fraud. Because kapag may SOD ka, meaning you have more than one function, most likely it's gonna be hard for you to trace kung paano nagkakaroon ng fraud. Hindi ka na matitrace. It's really untraceable, which is yun yung issue. Well, not to mention, but yeah. Just so you know, that's how it works sa corruption. Because of one of the reasons behind, or I should say, cause, is because of SOD issue. Especially sa mga small entities na konti lang yung mga tao nila. So, of course, kung konti ang tao, most likely function mo lahat to, which is gonna be hard for it to trace. Anyway, so ang functions that should be separated are number one, we have authorization, and then the second one we have recording, and then lastly we have custody. So ang point lang nito, when you say authorization, before a specific maybe, sige, example natin procurement. Before a specific inventory, supplies, or anything na pwedeng bilhin ng isang company, syempre kailangan authorized yan. It should be within the limit, it should be approved by a specific rank, a specific department, and like that. So that's authorization. It's more on approvals. And then recording, or sometimes they call it record keeping. So sa recording, ito yung sa accounting side, wherein si accounting siya magre-record sa books. So kung ano yung binili, syempre dapat i-record mo siya. Debit yada, credit yada yada. Ganon. So hindi pwedeng ikaw yung nag-approve, ikaw rin ang accounting. And then the third one is a custody. So pwedeng custody ng cash or siguro custody ng supplies itself. So, hindi pwede yon. Hindi pwedeng ikaw yung nag-authorize, hindi rin pwedeng ikaw yung nag-accounting, at hindi rin pwede na ikaw din yung magkikip ng asset na binili mo. Kung ano man yun, yung supplies or inventory. As you can see, sa mga small businesses, di ba? Especially mga barangay micro business enterprise and then mga SMEs, sila lang. Especially if you're a one-man team for a specific business, lahat to function mo, which is okay for small business. However, if we're talking about mga big businesses, mga multinational companies or big companies, hindi pwede to. Hindi pwedeng lahat to merong function ka or kahit dalawa. Ang better, of course, dapat hiwa-hiwalay kayo ng function. Hindi pwedeng isang tao lang to. Unless otherwise, magkakaroon ng internal fraud. Which we will discuss yung fraud sa next video, okay? I'll discuss more about fraud. And then, another topic, for me, this is important because, to be honest, na-appreciate ko lang to, ito, yan, nakikita nyo. I just appreciated it when I started working na. But when I am still studying, I'm not really sure what's the purpose of this. And I hope sa mga nag-work na, I hope you are really using this risk and control matrix, yung RCM, they call it RCM. I hope ginagamit nyo siya. Because, to be honest, ito yung para magiging best friend mo kapag auditor ka. From end to end. From planning hanggang monitoring, hanggang dulo. Remember, ang audit process natin is apat. Planning, performing, communicating, and reporting. Communicating and monitoring. Yung apat na yon. So, si RCM hanggang dulo yan. So, what is RCM? Tool for matching risks and controls. Yeah, kaya siya matrix kasi you need to match yung risk and control. But ang pinaka main reason behind why there's RCM simply because again, in everything that we do as an internal auditor, we are risk-based approach. So therefore, in everything or in every procedures that we test, in every procedures that we do, at the end of the day, dapat risk-based yun. So when we say risk-based, it's high-risk areas lang dapat ang focus. That is why, us, internal auditors, we need to be experts, not expert, but to have a proficient knowledge on risk management. That is why, if you are proficient in risk management, you can really identify, you can assess, you can assess the impact and likelihood or depende kung anong criteria ginagamit nyo for risks that you have identified. So, we're done with the risk management. And what we have discussed now, we need to match it with the identified risks to a control. Wherein, we have understood from the previous video and then from this video as well, yung main reason why there's control is to mitigate yung risk na, or yung high risks na na-identify nyo. So, from understanding that, you need to match it. Kung yung na-identify yung key control, yung na-identify yung significant control, ito pa talaga yung nagmi-mitigate sa high risks. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Kay galing mo mag-risk management, ang ganda ng foundation mo for the control, but you don't know how to match it, and hindi talaga nagma-match, then nonsense. So, the main objective is to match a key control to a key risks. So, there. So, as you can see, habang nag-analyze tayo ng risk, we are analyzing inherent risk lang without consideration control. Now, this time, in terms of matching the control, we need to assess again. So, because of that control, we need to assess what happened. So, we need to assess yung residual risk naman kung high pa rin ba, medium pa rin ba, or low pa rin ba. So, kaya may tinatawag tayong assessing adequacy of controls. So, this is the TOD, test of design, wherein we are testing the process of a specific control, whether this control is really mitigating yung risks as per design. Again as per design. Adequacy, as per design lang. So, without doing actual testing, meaning fieldwork, going out there, doing some matching and yada yada, wala pa. You are just looking at the design. You are just looking at the at the high level we're in. if the identified risks are really mitigating if the identified key controls are really mitigating risks, then therefore the design is okay. Sige, actually there's another slide here na may illustration, so it's gonna be easy for me to explain. Anyway, and then lastly, the tool, the RCM, is used for specifying controls that have to be tested, test of control. So sa una, we have test of design. We are assessing yung design, yung adequacy ng control process, if it's really mitigating yung risks. Now this time, if you're saying that the control is adequate, therefore the design is good, sa third line naman dito, we are proving if the control is really effective or if it's really implemented. Nangyayari ba talaga? So kung sinasabi mo ito yung control, ito yung objective niya, now dito sa TOC, test of control, ginagawa nga ba talaga? Effective nga ba talaga? Nagmi-mitigate nga ba talaga? So for better illustration, ganito siya. This is just a model, so it's kind of well, sana ganito rin yung ginagamit niya sa company niyo, but for some work, mga young auditors, actually not young, even the oldies, mga old auditors na, they are not using RCM. You should, kasi andito talaga yung ikot yung ano natin, how we do our work. So how you do it? So the first column, as you can see here, you need to write here your risk statement. As we have learned from the previous videos, dapat cause and effect ang writing niya. And then you need to put here yung impact and likelihood based on your risk assessment, based on the identified risk criteria. And then the last so fourth column naman is you need to identify kung ano ba to, high risk pa to, low risk pa to, or medium risk pa talaga. Inherent lang. Now we have the fifth column, it's the control. So you're gonna write here a control statement. So, dito pa lang dapat malaman mo na kung match pa talaga. Ito ba talaga yung control that really mitigates yung risks? And then, on the sixth column, you need to identify here, ano ba nature niya? Preventive, detective, corrective, or directive. So, again, this is a model. They are using a primary control. For some RCM, they are using IT-based classification controls. So, depende. And then, on the second to the last column, we have the assessment. So, this is the test of design. Yung assessment dito, test of design to. So we are gonna use our professional judgment if the identified key control are really mitigating yung high risk areas natin. If so, you can answer here adequate, so therefore the design is okay. The design is really mitigating the risks. You can also write here inadequate if walang control na na-identify to mitigate the risk, or by design hindi enough yung pang-mitigate ng risk sa key control dun sa assessment. And then on the last column, we have these tests. Actually, ito na yung test of control. So we are testing here yung effectiveness, TOC. Now, paano siya? If the assessment is adequate, the design is good, now this time sa last column, we need to prove kung effective ba talaga, kung na-implement ba talaga, kung nangyayari talaga. So, yes, and then the next columns yan, succeeding. Diyan yun na ilalagay yung audit procedures na i-discuss sa ibang instructor nyo. Yon. So, hanggang doon lang ako. Ito lang yung coverage ko. Hanggang test of design, saka test of control, and that's it. I hope i-cover to ng next instructor, and also sana ina-apply nyo to. Sana ginagawa nyo to. If so, then you're good. You're on the right track. You are using the leading practice of internal audit. Yeah, so we're done. So this time, we're gonna move now to the CIA questions. So I'll be explaining everything here, especially yung mga medyo complex yung questions, and then I'll give you tips also how are you going to answer the exam.